Well, I'm very pleased to get the perspective this hour of Daniel Levy. He is the president of the US Middle East Project, a well-known face here on the show. Daniel, great to have you back on the show. There's so much for us to talk about. We just heard from our correspondents in Washington and in Jerusalem, but I do want to start with Iran and these negotiations with Iran, and then we can talk Hezbollah, hopefully we've got time. Just what do you make, first of all, Daniel, of these mixed messages we've been hearing on these talks? Because President Trump says a deal could come as soon as this weekend. Iran's foreign minister's basically saying, undercutting that claim, basically saying there's no significant progress, no formal negotiation progress underway. How do you assess, Daniel, where we are right now?
It's good to be with you, and we're in a very similar place to where we've been for an awfully long time. And the premise of that is that you have an incoherent and an unstrategic American leadership that doesn't really know what it wants out of this. It's got itself into this, and it has been telling us, the president has been telling us, underneath all the bombast and the slightly sclerotic, unhinged social media posts, that every weekend, we're almost there, we'll be there. The Iranians desperately want this. They're so desperate. There isn't a deal because you don't have a US leadership with a seriousness of purpose and an understanding of the balance of power. Now that America got itself into this war and gave Iran certain leverage of how to manage that. So we could see an escalation. We could see the headlines of a deal, one that doesn't have detail or implementation detail, but allows perhaps opening on the Strait of Hormuz, allows the ceasefire to continue, and allows perhaps space for the mediators to negotiate more seriously. But unless and until we've got an American side that has the capacity to hold serious talks, we're going to be stuck in this. And in the meantime, the saboteur-in-chief, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, continues to work in those cracks to try and make sure there is no deal, to have as much of an influence on preventing the end of this war as he had on starting this war in the first place. And we see that through the attempt to deploy normalization with Arab states. Not going to happen. Expanded Abraham Accords as a condition, which President Trump tweeted and then spoke to in his cabinet, and what's going on in Lebanon. So we could have Trump walk away, declare victory. We could have an escalation. We could have a deal. But mostly what we've got is a stuck situation.
And I'll ask you in a moment about Prime Minister Netanyahu and, of course, that phone call that was had between the President Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and President Trump. But you spoke about an incoherence, Daniel. I think it was what you said, incoherence, talking about this administration, this government. We heard Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi say today that the war between Israel and Iran will only end, and I'm quote here, when it also ends in Lebanon, and that the world must recognize that Hezbollah is a part of Lebanon's reality. To what extent, Daniel, do you think Washington just doesn't understand the central role, or fails to understand the central role that Hezbollah plays in Iran's kind of regional strategy and as well as deterrence posture?
Look, it's not breaking news that the US has a poor understanding of areas it puts military bases in and then goes to war in. And this, there are some things that are very unique to this administration. There are some things that really are not. So one can think back to the Iraq war. One can think back to different embroilments of the US in this region. So this isn't new and exclusive to this administration. There was a situation in play where there was a kind of ceasefire in Lebanon prior to Israel and the US launching this war, but not really. Israel was still conducting military operations. Israel was beyond the border in sovereign Lebanese territory, but you could kind of let that slide from the Iranian perspective. And the thing today is that you see an intensification of that arena, and I think Iran will hold out. And perhaps it will accept something short of a full ceasefire, as was the case in the past. But it's not going to accept a situation where it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge ceasefire where Israel is able to occupy large swathes of Lebanon and where the US tries to turn the Lebanese government into a vehicle for waging civil war.
So Iran will hold out. Where does this leave then Prime Minister Netanyahu, of course, and Hezbollah? We've seen, not today, but in the last several weeks, there's been tit for tat between them. We've had a ceasefire in name only, right? We've had Lebanese and Israeli officials meeting in DC trying to hammer things out. And while this has been going on, ongoing violation, evacuation orders, and too many civilians killed in this. Where does this leave that?
It leaves it in a desperately bad situation for those who are impacted by this on the civilian front. You have more than a quarter of the Lebanese population displaced, 1.2 million people, and those displacements continue and in some respects intensify. So Netanyahu is trying to pull a fast one here. First of all, he's trying to create a win-win, where if the Americans let him bomb Beirut, he bombs Beirut. By the way, there is domestic criticism that he is not intensifying his campaign in Lebanon. This particular war, like the war with Iran, is not considered to have gone that well. So if Netanyahu can bomb Beirut with American permission, that's fine. If Netanyahu is stopped from doing so, but the deal on the table is that Hezbollah must cease fire entirely, and Israel must only cease fire against Beirut, but it can continue to occupy deep into Lebanese territory, can continue to clear out of its civilian population Lebanese towns and villages, and that's no ceasefire at all. So that's what the Americans have tried to put forward. It's not going to happen. The Lebanese government is clearly under tremendous pressure. It has a tremendous domestic credibility problem. It has a tremendous capacity problem. And the deal it is being offered, which is no deal at all, really, is either Israel will make war against your country or you make a civil war inside your country. So we hear, and it sounds very familiar even from the Biden administration, that you have a call between a US president and Israeli prime minister. There's frustration, there are expletives.
What did you make of that call? Were you surprised at all that there were expletives? Because President Trump was saying that he was perturbed. I think perturbed was the word he used. But early in the week, and this is according to sources, right, there were some expletives and some harsh words from him. Were you surprised at all, Daniel?
Not really, because American presidents sometimes have these moments where they lose patience with an Israeli leader. But does it lead to anything? There's a headline in, often satire captures this better than you or I can. And there's a headline in The Onion, President Trump issues a strongly worded check to Israel. And I think that captures it, because after that call, America hosts talks between Israel and Lebanon, and again aligns itself with an unreasonable Israeli position. Look at what's going on in Gaza. The American 20-point plan tilted in Israel's favor massively. Since then, America has tried to lead the implementation of that to be according to Israel's position. Israel was occupying more than 50% of Gaza. Now it's more than 60%. Now Netanyahu has told us more than 70%. A board of peace is put in place in order basically to launder and legitimize Israel's continued violations of international law and war crimes, people being killed every day there. So when you look at the details, Lebanon, West Bank, Gaza, Syria, continued war against Iran, you can give as many expletives, you can be as cussing as you like on a phone call, but are you going to distinguish between US interests and Israeli interests? And are you going to pursue the former, even if they clash with the latter? Apparently not so much.
The view from Daniel Levy. Always great to have you on the show, Daniel. Thank you very much indeed.